This conference will now be recorded.
So hi everyone, thank you for joining us today at our Microsoft Azure migration webinar. So I am Nathalie Sauclier, CMO at WCS Consulting IT. We're going to be together for 45 minutes. And today we're going to have great content for you. So thank you for your time today. I will give you a quick overview of WCS Consulting, who we are, why, and how we can help you simplify your IT and simplify your journey to the cloud. So this is the agenda for today. Then Arno, our technical cloud expert, will explain you how to best migrate from on-premises workloads or from Citrix Cloud, for example, to Microsoft Azure. And then I will tell you how WCS can help you simplify your migration to Microsoft Azure. And you will benefit today from a $2,000 voucher to use if you wish to migrate your workloads to Azure with us. And finally, we'll have a Q&A session, okay? And you will receive, of course, a copy of the presentation, and we'll be happy to have separate calls with you guys to discuss your specific needs. So let me introduce you quickly WCS to you, to tell you who we are at WCS Consulting IT. So as you can see on this slide, we are part of the Axel Team Group created in 2009, which includes 12 companies with $67 million in revenue last year, divided in 3 divisions: IT integration support, software application, and specific consulting in the healthcare industry. Axel Team have an international presence in 15 countries, in the United States, in Europe, Australia, Dubai, and we are extremely committed to the development of innovative digital solutions in the industry. And also, Axel Team, we have multiple strategic, institutional, and technology partners like Alcatel-Lucent, Samsung, Advantech, Dell, and many others, Schneider, etc. And WCS is part, as you can see on the slide, of the IT integration support division, and is Axel Team distribution partner in the US, also offering IT services for the implementation of the group's solution. And as I said, we are based in Tampa, in Florida. So, about our mission statement, our mission is clearly to simplify all aspects of IT, from the modernization of existing infrastructure to complete cloud environments, by simplifying all implementation processes through our technical expertise on the most advanced solutions and tools in the industry. And we are very proud to be the exclusive representative of TMM Software Tech for Good Healthcare Solutions, and as previously mentioned, of other Axel Team eHealth solutions in the US. Now, let's talk a little bit about how we can help you simplify your cloud journey. So we are a cloud and native company with strong technical expertise and cloud services on Microsoft, Citrix, VMware technologies, as well as other key niche players like ControlUp to manage infrastructure, for example. And we have the experience for 20 years and the teams to help transform your architectures and accelerate your cloud journey. As an example, Arno, who is with us today, is one of the 64 Citrix CTP, which means, if you know, Citrix technical professionals in the world. So we have really great expertise. And we provide our customers with advanced IT consulting services to design a technology-driven digital strategy or improve your software architectures. We also offer an end-to-end portfolio of integration and managed services, including support services to simplify your move to the cloud and support your teams at every stage of the journey. So we believe that a successful transition to the cloud is not only a question of technical skills, but also of meeting deadlines and budget commitments. And of course, we know that it is critical to understand the different types of cost and to be able to propose relevant technical and business solutions to our customers to control their cost. So now Arno is going to present us how to simplify the migration process to Microsoft Azure, and we'll be together again after his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathalie. So yeah, the idea today is to present you how to migrate and how to simplify your migration from on-premises to Azure. So the idea at the beginning is just that as every project, you will need to plan. So understand so our commitment here for the plan is to understand your business goals, determine the transformation level, and see with you where you want to go exactly. After that, I mean, usually we start the build platform. During the plan, we also make some assessment and design phases. After it's the build part. So build part, it's typically the basic setup for Azure and the site-to-site communication between on-premises and Azure. And after the migration itself, so migration you will see later on, it's multiple steps as well. So the best migration path, so as I told, so you have, I mean, two phases. The first one is to set up the basic Azure, make the assessment, and we'll generate some reports. The fact is, you can typically migrate to Azure without this part here, this phase, the assessment. The fact is, if you do not do this, how will you, how would I say that? How will you estimate the instance size in Azure that you want to implement? So as you probably know, the price that you will pay for will depend on the instance size in Azure. And if you, for example, if you don't want to make an assessment and you go with a one-to-one, you can do this. But the fact is that usually on premises, we provide more resources that needed. So the idea of the assessment here is to be able to analyze how the servers are used on-prem to really match and provide in Azure the minimum required resources. And in the phase two, so after the reports is done, and if you decide to migrate, so this is the phase two. So it will start with an initial replication. So it's a block replication from on-premises to Azure. After you have an optional step, which is the test one. So when the initial replication is done, you can test the VM. So it will boot up the VM on a specific VNet without impacting the production. And you can check and ensure that the VM is booting properly and you don't see any issue within the event log or the application part. After you will have the migration step and the validations. So typically, this is the path here. So prepare the Azure subscription. So you can have, we have customer who already has Azure. So if you have Azure, we don't need to implement the subscription, create the resource group, the VNet. We go to the site-to-site connectivity. If you already have site-to-site connectivity, so the site-to-site connectivity between Azure and on-premises can be done using Express Route. site-to-site VPN, or using other technology like Citrix SD-WAN. And as soon as all those prerequisites are done, we can migrate. So here, the schema here is an extraction of workload of a migration of the Citrix workloads. So this is why you see here the provisioning mechanism, which can be PVS, MCS, or other, but it's typically for Citrix. So in most of cases, if we speak about outside Citrix, we don't really need to take care about the provisioning mechanism. And after we'll have the migration. So set up the basic on Azure. So it's the onboarding, so the subscription. After you need to select the region. So if you don't already know, I mean, the price of the instances are can vary from one region to another. And so there is some tools that can help you decide which version you would like to use. There is a tools which will give you the latency between your headquarter and the resource you would like to use. After you need to create the resource group, the virtual network, and the site-to-site connectivity between Azure and your on-prem environment. So phase 1, step 2, it's the assessment. So the assessment will be done in Azure. So you create an Azure Migrate project on the Azure portal. You will download and deploy an OVF on premises. So an OVF that will be imported in vSphere. You will need to configure this server. So the server is provided by Microsoft with 180 evaluation license. 180 days, evaluation license. So there's still some stuff to do on the server to make it really ready to start to assess. So install the VMDK from VMware and other stuff. And after, the step 4 is the assessment of the on-premises environment. So the tool here will provide details like name, IP addresses, application installed, dependencies between the application, the cores, memory, disk, storage, and operating system. Sorry. So the step 2 here, it's the assessment. So when you see, so as you can see here, I have the name, the IP, all the application. And so as you can see here, I have credentials unavailable because the fact is it's a vCenter or it's another operating system than Windows. And when you create the assessment, you provide credentials. And I will see the number of cores, memory, disk, and storage used, as well as the operating system. So in the assessment properties here, I can define the target location, storage type, and if I want to use reserved instance or not. So the fact is that you have multiple things for the pricing in Azure. So the best way to go in Azure is to use reserved instance, because with the reserved instance, I mean, you have a fixed price for 3 years. And it's the same price if your VM are running 24/7 or if you stop the VM. If you go with a pay-as-you-go offer, you will pay only for what you will use. This means that if you run 24/7, it's not interesting because it will cost a lot. However, if you just run the VM, I would say 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, it can be interesting to go with a pay-as-you-go instead of reserved instances. And you can have reserved instances for 3 years or 1 year in Azure. And you can define a lot of things here. The performance history as well. So when we run an assessment, usually we run it for a few days. The best idea here is to run the assessment for 30 days, starting mid of a month and ending mid of the month after. Why? Because sometimes companies have a lot of things that are being done by the users in the beginning of the month or in the end of the month or the quarter. It will depend. So based on your the way you work, I mean, we can manage how long we will run the assessment, just to be sure that we will have all the required information and to provide you with the accurate informations. So after, you will see the report when the assessment is done. So the report, so as you can see here, it's a simple example. So you will see if your VM are ready or not. So ready in green, ready with conditions, or not ready. And you will see the price. So price for the storage and the cost. So just an interesting thing here. You have the storage, the cost for the storage, and the cost, monthly cost here. The monthly cost is the storage and the compute. So as you can see, the storage is the same price. Why it's interesting? Because the fact is, you can think about Azure. So I will just make a small parenthesis here. You can use Azure for disaster recovery purpose. So in this case, I mean, if you don't have a disaster recovery in place, you can go in Azure for disaster recovery. And in this case, it's interesting because you will initiate the replication between on-prem and Azure. And in Azure, the VM by default will be down. They will be up only in case of disaster. So you will just pay for the storage, which, as you can see here, the storage is the less expensive. I mean, it's the less amount. So it's just a parenthesis about disaster recovery in Azure. So the replication. So when you start the migration, the first step in the migration is the replication. So it's a block mode replication between on-prem and Azure, and it will depend the size of the disk, the number of VM, and the bandwidth between your environment and Azure. I mean, Azure, I would not say it's unlimited, but when I make some tests in Azure, I have nearly 1,000 megabits per second in upload and download. So here is an example here. So it's a video. So as you can see here, so we'll go in the Azure, migrate on the Azure portal. We'll select the server. So at this point here, the assessment server has already been installed, deployed, and the assessment done. So we'll click on replicate. We'll select the source, virtualization, and the appliance. After, we can go with or without an assessment. In our case, we have the assessment. So we select the assessment, and it will provide all the information from the assessment. So as you can see here, in this example, so 3 VM have been migrated. So it's a file server and 2 Citrix VDA. So when you migrate, you select the resource destination, so the resource group and the network, and you select if you have or not the license. And here you see I'm changing the size. The size which is provided here is based on the assessment, but the tool will allow you, if you want, to change from one size to the other. You can select the OS disk. So if it's writing select, it's because we have more than one disk. We can select which disk we want to replicate and the type of disk. So standard, HDD, or SSD. Or even you can have premium SSD in Azure. And we launch the replication. So everything is running. So as I told you, the initial replication will depend of many information like the size of the disk and the bandwidth. However, we can monitor the replication. So we're going back to the servers, and we will click on overview. And here on the overview, we will see the process going on. So we'll see also if we have healthy or if we have warning or critical servers. And here you see, so it's 11:15 and I'm refreshing. So just to let you know, it's not real time. I mean, it's a video and I made some cuts. So as you can see, when it's finished, I have the option to test the migration or not. And if I don't want, but just want to migrate without the test, I can do this as well. So I will select the VM and I will click on migrate. So, I mean, when I click on this on migrate, the fact is, as the initial replication has been done and it's a block mode, it will stop my it will do a synchronization between on-prem and Azure. It will shut down the VM on-prem and will boot up the VM in Azure. And in this case, we can see the migration has been done. And if we go in virtual machine here, we will see our VM running in Azure. So you have some, you can, I would say you can migrate pretty much everything in Azure except the domain controller. But file server, application server, database server, there is a lot of things that can be migrated in Azure. So you have two options here. You can migrate from on-prem to Azure if it's something you are thinking about, or you can just think about Azure for your disaster recovery plan. So when the initial replication has been done, so as I told you, you have the test, which is optional. And so you can run it or not. It will depend what type of server you are migrating. To be honest with you, if, for example, it's you are a Stux customer and you migrate a master image, you don't really need to test it. However, if it's an application server, you would like to test it just to be sure that everything has been migrated correctly. So after you will go to the next step, which is complete the migration. So you can stop the replication, and you can install the Azure VM Windows or Linux agent, and you can perform any post-migration application tweaks, updating database, connection string, etc. And you can cut over the traffic to the migrated Azure VM, remove the on-prem VM from your local VM inventory, and remove the on-prem VM from your local backup, and just go with Azure. So for the backup as well, you can use Azure to back up your VM. You can do backup, you can do snapshot in Azure. There's a lot of things that can be done at this point. And of course, update any internal documentation to show the new location and the IP. So the post-migration best practices, so it's just some example here. So I will not read everything. You will have all the presentation, and for each here you have some links on Microsoft site. And yeah, this one is interesting here. The Azure cost management to monitor resource usage and spending. So the main idea is here, as I told you, I don't know if you have any thought or any project to migrate to Azure. If you ever tested Azure or another cloud provider, but at this point, maybe we can discuss about that and see how we can help you to go your first step, I would say, in Azure or another cloud provider.
Okay. Otherwise, Arno, thank you for your great presentation. I will continue to present, and then we can have the Q&A session, if you're okay.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Thank you, Arno.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome,
Arno.
David.
So, Arno, let's go to the next slide. All right. So here is a slide to show you how we can help you simplify your migration to Azure. And the thing is that we have developed a comprehensive and very simple offer based on 3 steps: analyze, implement, and optimize. So the first thing, as you saw in Arno's presentation, is really to analyze your environment and your VMs to know what you can or cannot migrate. It's all about understanding the different costs, the pricing and estimating the costs associated with your infrastructure, depending on your compute needs, the data center, the bandwidth, and storage, but also the cost savings you will make. So we'll help you in these crucial steps thanks to our full assessment service and by using a set of powerful tools such as the Microsoft calculator, for example, or the Azure total cost of ownership report. Secondly is the implementation phase that will include the design, which is very important, the preparation, replication, and rollout steps. And third thing is about your investment optimization and how we can help you maximize the value of your migration to Azure. And so we can help you here monitor, for example, the availability, security, the performance, and costs. So we also help you monitor your VMs with software solutions such like ControlUp. And we have a full range of support services with block of hours. And we are pleased to announce today that we have set up a special offer for you to accelerate the migration to Microsoft Azure and make more cost savings that you can benefit from if you wish to migrate your workloads to Microsoft Azure with us.